There's something seductive about meeting a soul contract or a soul family member, and they're like a mirror. You can finish each other's sentences. You have amazing synchronicities, shared experiences. And the next thing you know, you're waking up in a ditch in Oklahoma, wondering what the F happened. When we're on the spiritual awakening journey, I don't want to speak for you, but I have found myself to be rather naive at times. And no, I've never woken up in a ditch in Oklahoma, just in case you're wondering. But I do know somebody that had a true story around a ditch experience. They were fine, but it was frightening for them because they didn't remember how they got there. And it was very disorienting. They were somebody that was also on the spiritual awakening journey. I believe going through lessons of discernment before I was. And when we are on the awakening journey, we will have themes of lessons. Discernment is a big one. And essentially, this is learning how to trust yourself. And what I find happens is that you will draw people to you that make you question reality, yourself, and ultimately them. But depending on your inclination, you might not question them until the very end, until after it becomes so obvious that you have no one else to question. What happens is that there is a shadow pattern of shape-shifting. And another way to say it is to mold oneself to other people's liking so well that they bury the true self and hide it from the people who are observing. And they can become so practiced at it that even the most intuitive person can actually be blindsided. And the way this happens is that, on one hand, it's normal to mirror parts of our personality that we believe will be liked by others. And it's actually pro-social behavior to fit in and to tell jokes that we know other people will find pleasing, to buy gifts that other people will find pleasing, and to share some stories, but not others, as a way of connecting. And this is normal social behavior. But on the other end of that spectrum are those that do this to a certain degree, knowingly and unknowingly, but pathologically the same, because they use it to their advantage, especially knowingly. That is outright manipulation and controlling the perceptions of other people by being selective about what they show in order to gain something, access, or some material gain, a relationship sometimes, so on and so forth. And people who are intentional about this may feel justified, or they may be at the furthest end of the spectrum and not even care enough to need a justification. That is the more callous type of person, verging onto some deep psychopathology, con artist, sociopaths, etc. And understanding that this notion that you are what you attract can have some flaws with it. That is the first premise. Because when we take on cliches like this as truth without deep examination, we can have a tendency of defaulting to everybody is like us in our minds. Because we assume, well, if I am a good person inside and I am going to attract good people, therefore I don't have to scrutinize the people that come into my life. It's all subconscious, of course. But you see how this is kind of a consciousness trap that is perfect to break out of if you are learning discernment. Why do people say this? Because 80% of the time it's true, but not necessarily when you're on a shadow journey or learning things like discernment and wisdom of intuition and learning how to trust yourself. Those are select cases where it is in your highest interest to have a mix of people that you draw into your life as a way to help you level up. You can consider it almost like a fitness, psychological, spiritual fitness exam. And so understanding that that premise holds true for some people some of the time, which means sometimes for you, it might not be true at all. And I think this is why we can sometimes be caught off guard and feel very naive about this whole process. Because when we are in the presence of an experienced shapeshifter and we're blinded because we believe that the reflection of us as a perfect mirror that happens to be very complementary in both uses of the word, it can actually trick us a little bit if we are not aware that there are stages of the spiritual awakening journey which require tests of intuition and discernment. And what I have observed is that some of the telltale signs that you are in the presence of a shapeshifter is they're very resistant to you being your own person. And boundaries are an issue. They don't like it when you have boundaries and when you disagree. Because deep down inside, no matter where they're at on the spectrum, the goal is for you to like them. The goal is for you to be happy with them. And part of the trademark of a shapeshifter is a high amount of agreeableness. They match you perfectly. Oh, you like that too. That's amazing. I do too. And there will be so much overlap that it's uncanny and wins you over. And so when you start to point out the differences, it can actually make a shapeshifter feel very uncomfortable. And this is when you will start to notice some turbulence in the energy dynamics, particularly if there is an energetic component, meaning that it is a spiritual friendship, relationship. And if you're not in the energetics yet, then you might notice a little bit of floundering, flailing, or reversing a direction. For example, a long time ago, had a very close friend that was a shapeshifter. I actually have had a couple. But these were not callous types or anything like that. They just really wanted to be liked by everybody that they liked. And so they molded themselves to people. So it was not used for personal gain. It was used to fit in and to subconsciously deepen and hasten intimate connections. And one of them, we had so many overlaps of music and food and drink, and I was very 3D at that time, was not spiritual at all. And it was a thing. Like, we liked the same alcohol, and it was kind of this spirit that was not rare, but it was a certain brand that was very particular. That's a better way to say it, particular. We were friends for a long time. And at some point in the friendship, we started separating, going our own ways, and a lot happened over the years. And when we got back in contact, I mentioned something about that alcohol because I remembered that we both liked it. And they told me, I don't like that. To me, it was a beautiful sign that perhaps they were moving out of the shapeshifting and that they were shapeshifting perhaps with somebody else. But I was surprised because it was a thing. It was an actual thing. And when they stopped shape-shifting with our friendship, all of a sudden I got to see who they really were. I knew somebody else that was a shapeshifter, and they were more uncomfortable with any delineations between me and them. So much so that if I wanted to do my own thing, or if I didn't want to participate in an activity that they thought of, they felt rejected, which I thought was very odd because we've always been our own people. But the closer we got, the more there was this expectation that there would be this merging. We talked about it, but it didn't stop the turbulent feelings, and this was a spiritual friendship. And it felt very uncomfortable because they were hiding their true person inside. And I could see them trying to be likable. I could see them trying to please me. It was really odd because I myself have done similar things, which is why I can speak to the shape-shifting so detailed. I was unconscious when I was doing it, much like that first friend and I. Our friendship was built in the 3D world with no spirituality at all. And we did this to each other because that's how we knew how to create friendships. So now fast forward decades, or maybe just one decade, now all of a sudden, I'm seeing this effect for the first time, but with spiritual eyes. And it was creepy, actually. And it made me realize how creepy I was way back when. But what was disheartening about this particular friend is that they were stealing from me. And so their shape-shifting, although it wasn't directly tied to trying to gain or take, it was part of their personality. It was used as a shield. And it became evident to me because they would reflect back things like interdimensional shifting and reality shifting concepts, things of that nature. But when we probed deeper, it was evident that they weren't actually synthesizing and integrating the concepts as though it was their worldview. They were making jokes about it. But it was obvious that in moments of tension or moments of reflection, that they were actually still anchored into a unidimensional plane of existence that was very much rooted in materialist reductionist perspectives. And they were becoming, at some level, what I think they thought that I wanted, almost as a way to disguise the fact that they were stealing from me, and then not taking accountability for who they really actually were hiding. And this was a powerful lesson of discernment, because I brought this person into my home at the most vulnerable time after I had given birth, when financially I was extremely uncertain and was struggling for food. And whereas I expected support and friendship, I was not left out in a ditch in Oklahoma, but I was faced with some very strange sensations that when I started confronting them, I didn't always feel safe, because they couldn't take responsibility. And it felt like there was a big shadow part of them that was contemplating harming me, which was so unreal. Not that I think they would ever act out on it, but it was so bizarre. And then the manner in which they refused to leave and their behavior degraded, whereas it was very conscientious, very thoughtful, suddenly became like I had a stranger living in my house that wouldn't leave and wouldn't communicate with me, revealing the underlying person who was actually present with me, who I had invited, because I did not listen to my intuition. And so when you are working on these lessons and you are love and light and open and friendly and high vibe, as many of us are, right? Especially when we start doing the work, we release a lot of those patterns. And so it launches us into this amazing experience that is very attractive. When you are very magnetic, you have a high propensity for attracting all sorts of people. And then, if you have any sort of naivete, any history of just trusting without vetting, without verification, and just taking people at face value and believing in the premise that you are what you attract, what is going to happen is that you are going to learn how to trust yourself. One of the best ways that I've found, in addition to the boundaries and seeing how people react when you have your own identity, is to feel how you actually feel about the connection. And any sort of moments are very often at the beginning very subtle, because the red flags are not always so obvious. But if you look back, what you'll find is that whenever there was a boundary, either put up by you or somebody like a mutual person, you will feel their true reaction. And that can alert you that you might be dealing with a shapeshifter who deep down has a very hard time with other people's boundaries, because they need to merge They need to be liked. They need you to believe that they are just like you.